From the 2000s through the 2010s, the Knicks and their fans have suffered for 2 decades. Even with moderate levels of success during the Carmelo Anthony era, you never got the sense the organization was building the team in a meaningful way. I mean, they had one of the oldest rosters for several years, and plenty of players who simply did not care about winning. Still, the fans were okay with that, because as tumultuous as the Melo era was, it was still miles better than what happened previously. The Stephon Marbury era, with Isaiah Thomas as the head of operations. It was, without question, the worst era in franchise history. Heck, it might even be the worst era of any team's history, just due to the sheer combination of bad management, selfish players, horrendous chemistry, and a complete lack of effort. There wasn't any other team that got booed as often on their home court as the Knicks did. They deserved it. So what makes this era of New York basketball different? This time, it's not necessarily the talent that's carried them thus far, but their camaraderie, their trust in each other, their relentless drive and motivation to win at any cost, even through injuries. 'Cause they play for each other. This team is the embodiment of New York. They love the hustle and hard work these players put in, and that's why Knicks fans have flooded arenas across the country. But how exactly were they able to concoct a team filled with similar-minded players like this, all with intangibles across the board? How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today, let's take a look at everything that led to this era of Knicks basketball. Every move, every decision was calculated, and now they truly stand out as an anomaly on the biggest stage.
We may be getting to a point with the losing to where Carmelo may consider waiving that no trade clause.
They feel that my time in New York is just over then.
Knicks fans very well aware this could be his final game.
In the 2017 offseason, after 4 straight years of missing the playoffs, the Knicks decided, it was time to move on. Melo's last few years have been met with some mixed feelings. On one hand, the Knicks finally had a hometown superstar they can cheer for. On the other hand, Melo was no longer good enough to build a playoff team around. He was holding this team back, not just on the court, but his contract. One of the few players in NBA history with a no-trade clause in his contract, which is why the Knicks could not get much in return for him, though the 2018 second-round pick did eventually turn into Mitchell Robinson. Not too long after, they traded away Porzingis, a young player who many thought would carry the torch for New York into the future. That never happened, as the injuries and his lack of commitment resulted in the Knicks pressing the restart button once again. People point to the signing of Jalen Brunson that launched the Knicks into their best era since the 1990s. Or maybe the hiring of Tom Thibodeau, who brought an old-school, tough mentality of coaching that emphasized discipline and teamwork. However, the catalyst that truly kicked off this new era is the hiring of Leon Rose as the president of the New York Knicks. Previously, Leon Rose was a well-established basketball agent, representing the biggest names in the sport, such as LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Allen Iverson, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, Joel Embiid, the list goes on and on. But most importantly, he has connections. In fact, he was the guy behind the scenes who created the Big Three in Miami. At the time, he was LeBron's agent, and after a meeting with Pat Riley, they discussed a proposal of forming this super team, and all the details that made it work. The rest is history. So even though Leon had little experience with being an executive, he's been around NBA circles for a long time. His son was also an agent and represented Jalen Brunson, and that's how he got to New York in the first place. Leon Rose took over a Knicks team that was quite young, some players so talented and skilled but undisciplined. So his first move? Hiring Tom Thibodeau. In years past, Julius Randle had always been a polarizing player. There were times where he legitimately looked like he had the skills to become a superstar.
Payton trying to stick with him. Stolen by Randle. Randle going down the other way, goes up and throws it down.
Other times, he let his emotions get the better of him. In Thibodeau's first year as the Knicks coach, he cited his most memorable moment being his first ever meeting with Julius Randle. When I first got hired, I asked him to come in so we could spend some time, just to get to know each other. You could see how highly motivated he was, the willingness to work and sacrifice for the team. and then he improved in every facet of the game. Under Tom Thibodeau's new game plan, Randle's hard work paid off. It resulted in the best season of his entire career, with career highs in points and rebounds and double the assists compared to the previous season. Randle elevated himself into an all-star for the first time of his career. Tibbs took notice of Randle's playmaking, which saw a remarkable improvement over time along with his three-point shot. A career-high 41% was way better than we ever thought Randle could do. With an intention to build the offense around him, it took advantage of his passing, a previously overlooked part of his game. With a new, revamped offense and a group of players who were hungry to make the playoffs, the Knicks excelled in the pandemic-shortened season. They went 41-31, their first winning record in 8 seasons. They exceeded their projected win total by a gargantuan 20 wins. And unfortunately, they were kinda turned into a laughingstock in the playoffs.
As Young fires from way downtown and takes a bound. Not appreciated.
Randle played through some injuries and struggled, but overall, it was a step in the right direction. For the Knicks, the plan moving forward was quite simple. They wanted to build their identity on toughness and grit, acquiring players who exemplify these qualities in their playstyle. There used to be a quote around the league that was more prevalent back in the day. It was, quote, "New York knows basketball." What is that supposed to mean? Well, it means that New Yorkers recognize hard work and hustle, and appreciate it. So if they're watching a team that simply does not give a crap, like the Knicks for 2 decades, they can see it and they don't like it. Of course, having the talent certainly helps, but it's not all that matters. What truly matters is the players going as hard as they can to maximize their potential. The main ambition of both Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau was to acquire players who meet this criteria, to bring back this hard-nosed style of basketball that brought them so much success in the past. Every trade, every acquisition, every free agent signing reflected this criteria. As the summer of 2022 commenced, the Knicks had their eyes on Jalen Brunson. Well, they actually had their eyes on Donovan Mitchell first, but they couldn't get him. However, with Brunson, that's where Leon Rose's connections kicked in. Weeks before they even made him an official offer, Leon Rose hired his dad, Rick Brunson, to be an assistant coach. It definitely swayed him to come to New York. Though, in terms of tampering, yeah, that is kinda sketchy. However, most importantly, Brunson's contract of 4 years, $104 million was initially criticized as a bad deal. Which is crazy when you think about it now, because it turned out to be arguably the best contract in the entire league. Just about $25 million a year for a guy who finished top 5 in the MVP race, while most players of his caliber are making upwards of $40 or $50 million a year. We all knew Brunson had the talents. It was obvious in Dallas. When Luka got injured, it was Brunson who carried the offense. People were hesitant if he can do this for an entire season. Was he truly a number 1 option? Well, there's no more questions about that. Nevertheless, this is always the first step in building a contender. You gotta get lucky with a bargain contract. Similar to how the Warriors re-signed Steph Curry to the biggest steal of a contract in history. Oh, and speaking of great contracts, in this same offseason, the Knicks made a relatively obscure signing at the time. Isaiah Hartenstein, for 2 years, $16 million. He was unknown at the time. He showed some potential back on the Clippers, but nobody knew much of him. Until he arrived to New York and stamped his mark as an incredibly energetic, high-effort center. Hartenstein, along with Robinson, became 2 of the best offensive rebounders the NBA has ever seen. For so long, the root of their struggles for decades was due to poor contracts and management. From Eddie Curry's ludicrous deal to Joakim Noah's even more absurd contract. They also made some putrid trades for like Andrea Bargnani. It's a long list of bad moves. But this new era in New York is different. Around this time, the team also started getting rid of players who they deemed as non-impactful and did not have a future in New York. 2 young players in particular, Cam Reddish and Kevin Knox, were not improving at all. And despite being lottery picks, the Knicks gave up on them before re-signing them to a deal they were gonna regret. With Brunson and Hartenstein as two critical acquisitions, the team started ramping up faster than we imagined. The 2022-23 season proved to be a huge turning point for the Knicks franchise. At the trade deadline, they made one of the most important trades ever for Josh Hart. The perfect role player and the pure manifestation of New York itself. Everything about him is exactly what this franchise needed. They also advanced past the first round of the playoffs for the first time in over a decade, stunning a Cavs team that was favored going in. Their pieces they acquired over the years added a level of physicality and rugged interior presence the Cavs could not match. The Knicks still lost in the second round, but it was still a bright sign for things to come. Jalen Brunson emerged as a legitimate number one option. Oh, that contract is certainly looking good. After an optimistic postseason run, the organization knew what kind of players they needed to build upon this roster. At the 2024 trade deadline, the team had a decision to make. RJ Barrett was supposed to be the future of the Knicks franchise, the Knicks' prized possession who spent years trying to develop in New York. But he just wasn't a good fit anymore. He was the odd man out. Barrett's skill set was somewhat redundant with their stars, and he wasn't nearly as effective off the ball, nor was he the defensive presence they needed. They were a good defensive team, but their defense on the wings was sorely lacking. As the roster moved in a different direction and the core players already established, there was no need to wait anymore. They packaged him and fan favorite Emmanuel Quickley to Toronto in exchange for the more experienced, more reliable OG Anunoby, a big, strong wing player who became the final piece of the Knicks starting lineup. Oh, and I forgot, in the previous offseason, they reunited the Villanova trio, acquiring Dante DiVincenzo, who fixed another issue they had, which was their spacing and three-point shooting. Through the post-Melo years, the Knicks' mission was to create a team that not only represented what New York sports should be, but a team that was built through smart trades and signings. It's different than most other teams these days, who try to build through the draft and watch their youngsters develop. The Knicks, unfortunately, have missed on most of their lottery picks. They didn't exactly have a great run with their draft selections, as several players turned out to be busts. So, unlike most other teams, they approached their rebuild from a different angle and sought like-minded players who are unselfish and equipped with intangibles that don't show up on the box score. This is everything Knicks fans have hoped for, to have a team that people want to root for. Sadly, for most of the 2023-24 season, they were hit by the injury bug, so we haven't seen the squad at its full potential. Perhaps that's why this team is so special. Like with all Tom Thibodeau teams, the next man up will play just as hard as the first guy. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments what you think what the future is for the Knicks franchise. Is a potential championship possibly in reach? Or is it just a hopeful dream? Folks, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.